going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Browns Beat podcast. I am Derek, and joining me today, you know him from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, 92.3 The Fan, The Barbershop, and at GBush91 on Twitter. Joining me, the one and only Mr. G. Bush. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey man, glad to be with you. Thanks for inviting me on, and it's football week, man. So it's always a good day to talk a little Brown. So I'm excited.
It is. It's crazy. It came out of nowhere. It feels like the off season was just going, and here we are. Football is back, man. So, but with that being said, we got some Cleveland Browns football to discuss. We play the Cowboys this week, week 1, 4:25 in Cleveland. Tom Brady's first game as a color commentator. Kind of a big deal. Kind of a big first home opener for the Browns. But G, my question for you is, since the Browns have had Deshaun in Cleveland, I feel like the standard has constantly been moving, right? Deshaun played 6 games his first season. That was because of suspension. 6 games his next season in Cleveland last year with the shoulder injury. My biggest thing, G, is I think even if we do get to see Deshaun play hopefully a full season this year, what do you think the standard should be? What should we hold Deshaun to for this season?
Well, I think you did a good job of setting it up. To me, I've said, man, these is the toughest 11 games I've ever seen in my life. Now, you go back to the first 6 games when he was suspended. He wasn't even allowed in the facility. He couldn't practice. Yeah. He didn't practice. He took a year off prior to that. So you talking about like a guy coming off the street, the sidewalk, to play games against guys who have been practicing for a year and a half. They're in the middle of the season. He came back at the end of the season, and it's like, what do you expect? Like, I don't know what type of quarterbacks that you've seen before, but it's an unprecedented situation for a guy to come back and be playing like that. And then you got the injury where he, started off a little slow. I mean, he had a terrible weather game the first game. Second game of the year, he didn't play all that well. But I thought he did play well against Tennessee. I thought he was playing well against the Cardinals. And he was obviously ended up against the Ravens and played some of his best football he did last year in the second half of that game. So I thought he was trending in the right direction. But for me, I've always said, I've always talked about it a little bit. And it says that, when people talk about it and they're like, all right, what are the expectation levels? I've always said that Deshaun Watson, I tell him I need 4,500. Right. Yeah. And the reason I say I need 4,500 is because if you give me 4,500, and sometimes it's like tongue in cheek a little bit, like, but if you give me 4,500 yards, everybody can just go jump in the lake. At that point, you can say, okay, well, you can stop talking about the worst trade ever, whatever the case may be. But I think realistically, I think one of the things that he can look at and needs to look at is if he could play 17 games, that's what I'm looking at. 17 games for me gives me an opportunity to see a sample size, the ups, the downs, the adjustments in the season. And if he could throw anywhere between 3,900 and 4,100 yards, 4,000 yards or so, somewhere in that 32, 33, 34, 5 touchdowns somewhere in there and give me about 300, 400 yards on the ground, I'm ready to get it done. I think you can win with that effort. And I think if you can get that with this Browns defense, you could definitely find yourself in a place where the Browns are going to be winning more games than not.
Yeah, and that's my biggest thing with Deshaun. I think there's a lot of people trying to judge him based on what we've seen. But, G, in my opinion, we haven't seen enough to be able to judge Deshaun Watson. I mean, he's thrown for just over 1,100 yards in both seasons. Both years, 7 touchdowns, 5 picks. Last year, 4 picks. Completion percentage, not all that great, but man, G, we haven't really seen him. And I feel like this is the first season where, in my opinion, at least, it's almost make or break. We got to see at least, my bare minimum is 14. I need to see 14 games or more out of Deshaun Watson. But, G, the one thing that me and you both, I don't know if you know this or not, but we both have been pounding the table for the last few years on the same issue. Wide receiver. If you go out and trade for Deshaun Watson, you got to surround him with talent. I've been pounding the table. Gee, the Browns have gone out and they've added a couple guys throughout the draft with Jamari Thrash, Cedric Tillman, David Bell before that. And then obviously you trade last year for Elijah Moore. In this offseason, the Browns go out and add Jerry Jeudy, who I think is a perfect fit. I've been a big fan of Jerry Jeudy for a few years now. Um, but when it comes to Deshaun in this next upcoming season, have we surrounded him with enough? Are there any weak links that you can point to in the receiving game?
Well, listen, there's a couple of things here. Obviously, you guys, Amari Cooper is going to do his thing. Amari Cooper is as solid as they come at wide receiver. He's a route tactician. He's a technician when it comes to running routes. He's not shown any signs of slowing down. Leading receiver over 1,200 yards last year. You had Jerry Jeudy, and I was more excited than some of my brethren, excuse me, in the community in the Browns media about Jerry Jeudy. I think
Mm-hmm.
that the Jerry Jeudy just didn't get the most out of his situation, or vice versa. Denver didn't get the most out of him with their quarterback situation. And I think Jerry Jeudy is a guy who's going to benefit from a new change of scenery. I think that he's going to, I think it was a really big thing for the Browns to invest in him like that. To give him the new contract sight unseen. I think he brings another avenue to the table of a guy that's route running. He has some long ability, a really known as one of the best route runner coming out of Alabama. And so when you add that guy to, as a true number two receiver, you take a look at what they had last year in Donovan Peoples-Jones, and you were trying to see what you can get out of Elijah Moore. We learned Elijah Moore was not a regular two receiver. They
Mm-hmm.
tried some different things with him. Now he's better slot. He's better used in the slot. They can get creative with Elijah Moore doing some certain things, but now I think he's better slotted there. I thought Cedric Tillman had a very strong preseason. By all accounts, and what I saw the preseason, and Jamari Thrash had a very good rookie campaign in terms of catching the football and doing some things. So I like the receiving core. Some people would have said, "Hey, David Bell was a guy that made the team. We didn't see much of him." David Bell is a fine receiver. He's a fifth or sixth receiver on the roster. When he has had an opportunity to play, he's caught the ball very well. Caught a couple touchdown passes against the Cincinnati Bengals last year. So I think they kind of like what they had in David Bell. And then when you got the guy like David Njoku, who is a receiving threat as well, you look at it like David Njoku's going to be your third best receiver. And when you look at some of the things they got, so I think they're improved in that area. I think the vertical passing game with Ken Dorsey is going to be improved. I think there's going to be more route concepts. Some more things in terms of your option routes. The receivers are going to run more vertical. So for me, I think this offense is more suited to Deshaun Watson. I think there's more weapons that he has at his disposal, and I like the overall concept of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I think it's kind of obvious that Andrew Berry's come out in the last couple years, and the goal has been versatility. I think when you look at this wide receiver room, a lot of these guys can play a lot of different positions. Jerry Jeudy can slide him in, play inside, he can play outside. You can argue the same with Elijah Moore, even, to be honest with you. But a guy that you mentioned, Cedric Tillman, he is fascinating for me this year. I think because of the fact that he's like the only solidified X receiver for us. I think he certainly has a role.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily know what that's going to look like in this new Ken Dorsey offense. So, for you, when you see a group of wide receivers, like I mentioned with the versatility, you can move them around. And then you got a guy like Cedric Tillman, which I think people forget at Tennessee, he was their dude. He was that physical guy. I want to say he had a 14-yard average depth of target at Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And then you have Jalen Hyatt, your burner. Do you kind of see us using him more as what we envisioned him being when we traded Donovan Peoples-Jones? Do you think that's going to actually pan out this season?
I think one thing that you'll see is with Cedric Tillman is I think what they'll try to do is to get him on mismatches. One of the things that we had with the Browns before is pretty much there wasn't very much creativity in terms of how are we going to get guys involved in our route combinations and patterns. I think Cedric Tillman, even though he's a big guy, I think you can work him inside on slot corners to try to get him, certain things open in the red zone. I think you can work him over the middle because he is such a big physical guy. And I think, you got guys like Elijah Moore who are more quick and sit down in zones and can do things like that. But I think that when you get Cedric Tillman, I want to see him working him on smaller corners. I want to see him working in the slot a little bit. I want to see some things where it's almost you're using him as I wouldn't say a tight end, but you're using him, as a guy that's going to be a mismatch vertically, so he can work up the seam, high point the football, and do some things like that. I think, when you look at Tennessee, he ran a lot of the route tree on the outside. Jalen Hyatt was the guy that was running your deep routes, the go routes, the fly patterns. But you watch Cedric Tillman, he was the guy running those routes, kind of in that big position as an X receiver. So for me, what I would do is I move him around. I get him on mismatches. I'm not necessarily going to line him up on somebody and say beat man coverage all the time. I want to see him get in and work in and being able to utilize his size and physicality in some unique type ways.
Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued. I think they're going to move him around as well. It's going to be interesting to see how the Browns come up with all these guys and how we kind of attack. So, with that being said, this new Ken Dorsey offense. Ken Dorsey has done a lot of great things for Josh Allen with Buffalo, going back to Cam Newton in his prime years with the Carolina Panthers. Ken Dorsey's got a record of bringing success out of quarterbacks. And with Deshaun, we talked about it already. I think this has got to be the year. This has got to be the year we see some progression in his game, at least in Cleveland. But there's a big factor here. And the heart and soul of this offense, number 24, we're not going to have him. We're not going to have him for at least 4 weeks, maybe more. I personally think probably the Eagles game is what we're looking at for Chubb to come back. But schematically, when it comes to the first 4 games of this year, I don't really love what we have at the running back position. Obviously, Dante Foreman is what he is. Jerome Ford has progressed, but he's not anywhere near Nick Chubb. And then you got Pierre Strong there. I think the Browns are going to have to get really creative in this pass game. And they have to find ways to get Deshaun Watson comfortable, get him back in rhythm. Maybe not attacking downfield, but just chunk plays. You know what I mean? Moving the line of scrimmage. So when it comes to this first part of the season, G, we have an easier stack of opponents, right? Jacksonville, New York, Washington. If you're Kevin Stefanski and you're Ken Dorsey, what sort of mindset as far as the game plan side of things are you going into those first couple games with, knowing you're not going to have Nick Chubb?
Well, listen, the way I look at it is, if I'm not going to have Nick Chubb, I think one thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to make sure that you do at least continue to mix the run game in. The worst thing that you can do is get one dimensional and start throwing the ball all around the park, given the fact that you do have a left tackle in Jack Conklin who looks like he's probably going to move to the left side because Jed Wills has not practiced or played all preseason or offseason. He's going to be going against some of the best pass rushers in the game right now. When you take a look at what you got the first 4 games, you look at it, you got Micah Parsons. You definitely got a guy like Michael Parsons, Max Crosby. You got I believe for the Giants, his name it eludes me.
He was Carolina.
Kayvon Thibodeau.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got Josh Allen for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you are able to basically still run the football, still mix it in and out. And I think you got to have the short game too. Deshaun Watson can't be holding the football. I think that you gotta mix the ball in, get a little creative, and then make sure you stay behind the sticks. No false starts, no penalties, no things like that. And I think if you can do that, you can eliminate some of the. I would say you can eliminate some of the need for a dynamic running game, but you still have to commit to it. You still have to run the ball, and you got to do it at a committee. And Deshaun Watson has to use his legs a little more, but he has to be smart about it. 17 games is what we want, right?
Yeah.
So we don't want to mess with that. But I think those are the 2 things that you got to do in terms of that.
No, for sure. And like you mentioned, the teams that we play early on might not be the best, but the defensive lines are loaded. You look at the Raiders adding Christian Watson. You got the Giants. You brought him up already, Kayvon Thibodeau. Yep. But they added Brian Burns. Mm-hmm. So this NFL offseason, we forget where guys have gone. But some of these teams up front have stacked up. And with the Browns' holes on the offensive line, injuries were obviously a huge problem last season.
Mm-hmm.
I like what we got from right guard over as far as starters go. when it comes to that left tackle position, if Jack Conklin is indeed going to be the one filling that hole there, how comfortable should we as fans, how comfortable should Kevin Stefanski and Ken Dorsey be when it comes to drawing up these pass plays? Because obviously we got to get the ball out quick. We got to keep Deshaun upright as much as possible. But Jack Conklin's an all-pro. Jack Conklin's that dude. He can handle his own. But it's not easy. It's not easy switching from the right to the left side. How confident should we be, and what should we temper expectations? Should we expect Jack Conklin to struggle in the early weeks moving to left tackle?
Yeah, you're gonna have to listen. We talked about this on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show today. So that means I got to pick somebody, but we'll get to that. This is pretty easy. Look, we're done with that. No, so I will say this: when you got a guy like Jack Conklin, right? When he's predominantly played the right side, when you go to the left side, you're changing the way you think about the game. You go from the right hand and being heavy dominant right to heavy dominant left. Now your kick slide is something that you got to worry about. Kick slide is all about angles. If you kick slide and your angle is too sharp, you can give up an inside pass rush move to a guy like Micah Parsons. If your kick slide is too flat, you could get beat around the corner on a speed rush by somebody like Max Crosby. You got to always be very pinpoint when you're talking about your hand placement. And when you're playing guys, and Josh Allen, he just had 17 and a half sacks for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So one of the things that you're going to have to realize in this situation is this: you're dealing with guys that can beat you in multiple ways. So when you're Kevin Stefanski, you have to be cognizant and help. I thought last year they did a really good job of keeping David Njoku in on pass plays where he would give a hand, he would give some of the protection and help, and then check release into the flats. And the great thing about that was he would not only check release and helps out some of those tackles, but we found that defenses were leaving him open. Right now, you got David Njoku who's catches the ball, and he only has like 3 yards, when he catches it. But he's such a load to bring down in an open field that he's getting yards after catch because off simple check release plays. So I think you're going to see a heavy dose of that. And the great part about it is when you got technically. Usually, I like my tackles to be the best guys on my line of scrimmage. I like those guys to be my best linemen. However, the Browns are at a luxury. Their two best, linemen are guards. So the great part about that is in the interior, the Dallas Cowboys don't necessarily have the greatest defensive tackles. Those guys are not guys that they really scare you. But DeMarcus Lawrence and Michael Parsons are. So now you got Wyatt Teller and Joel Bitonio who can give you a little help, right? Who can give you a hand. And when it comes to knowing the plays and the protection schemes, Joel will be able to kind of, give him some, heads up and picking protection up. So it's a luxury for the Browns to have those guys in there. There's some things Kevin Stefanski will get aggressive with and basically help them out. I think the screen game, the quick game, and mixing up the check release with the tight ends will definitely help a tackle. And I think Jack will slowly work his way in, but we do have to temper our expectations, especially given the competition that he's going to see the first 4 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. But the good news is for the Browns, at least with Jack Conklin and that offensive line, they got nothing better to go up against in practice. I mean, you are going up against iron sharpens iron. Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, them guys in the middle there, dominant defensive line. And we saw what the Browns did last season defensively. Jim Schwartz coming in, what a change. I mean, this defense went from, man, we got some problems to we are the problem. And when you look at this defense, the only weak link that I see, because you look at the secondary stacked. You look at the defensive line is stacked, and we added even more. The linebacker position fascinates me. I think a lot of people this offseason expected the Browns to maybe add more. Now, we did do the most important checklist of the offseason. That's extending JOK. We had to keep JOK around. But, you look at who we brought in. Devin Bush, Jordan Hicks, Nathaniel Watson in the draft. Mohamed Diabate makes the 53-man roster this year. How do you feel about this linebacker position? Do you view it as a big liability? Do you think it's going to be more than enough as far as what we're going to ask them to do? How do you view the linebacker position for the Browns?
Well, listen, I think Devin Bush and Diabate will be guys that you can put in situations in your base package. And, you know, the Browns are going to play a bunch of nickel. They usually play nickel. Nickel's almost their base formation. But on heavy rundowns, you'll see Devin Bush. And I think he can do okay in that position. I think he'll bring that run stopping abilities. He's very athletic and get after bring that thump to the party, so to speak. I think Jordan Hicks, he's the guy that he looks like. They've had this before. You take a look at Anthony Walker. You take a look, at that middle linebacker position. Guys that are going to line people up. I call it the men's warehouse position. You know what I'm saying? They want guys that look like they do commercials for the men's warehouse. They real button up. They don't play no games, and just good overall team leaders. I think when you look at JOK, this year is going to be a breakout year for him. When you talk about what he's being able to do, 100 plus tackles, 20 tackles for a loss, 3.5 sacks. He was the man. He was the only dude on the Browns defense that showed up against the Houston Texans. He made a bunch of plays in that game. I think that he's going to have even a better year this year than he had last year. And that's hard to say. I think the second year in this defense is going to unleash him. I think he's going to be more creative with JOK, and he's going to run sideline to sideline, making plays. When you got guys with that, for me, I like to have studs at every level. Right? I got Myles Garrett. I think JOK is that guy in the second level, and I got Denzel Ward in the third level. When you got 3 studs in every level, you can have a transcendent type defense, because now there's more than one ways you can lock guys down. You can lock guys down just basically by having the opportunity to play great coverage. And the Browns got 3 of the top 35 coverage guys in the league, according to PFF. You got JOK, who is a guy that is going to run down sideline to sideline, making plays. He's a terror to try to block in the open field when you're a guard. And obviously, Defense Player of the Year, Myles Garrett. We don't even say nothing about what he brings to the table. So I think the Browns defense in the first few games, we talked about it, they'll need to help have the offenses back a little bit, but I think they'll be dynamic.
Yeah, and the defense last year, just kind of expanding on that, nothing short of incredible. I mean, 29.1 percentage on third down. That is unreal. And then you look at it, only gave up 253 first downs last year, and that was 45 less than the second team in the NFL, and that was the New York Jets, which kind of surprised me when I read that. But looking at this defense, you play defensive tackle. The Browns have added a lot as far as on that defensive line, bringing back Zadarius Smith, Obo's still there, but you bring in Quentin Jefferson, you bring in Mike Hall through the draft, you re-sign Shelby and Mo Hurst. What is that like on the defensive line to be able to have that ability to have a healthy and a fresh rotation of guys that you can trust and that you can count on? How big is that?
You got to have a guy. You got to have that rotation in there. You got to have it because you want to keep guys fresh to a certain extent, right? And you want guys to be able to get the best pass rush. You're not looking for guys to play 60 snaps. This is not high school or anything like that. You want to get guys ready to go. As I draft Christian Kirk, you want to get guys.
Good pick.
By the way, I do apologize. I'm in like 70, 75 of these fantasy leagues, right? And so it's crazy. You don't really never know when they're like, oh, you have a draft today. And I'm like 7 of them. So I would blow them off, but it's one with like Albert Breer in them. So I can't kind of like blow Albert Breer off as I'm on the clock again and filibuster.
Do you have the last pick? Did you get the snake?
No. What I need? Do I need a defense? Can I get a defense here? I'm taking them. Now I'm gonna ask you. This is live. Should I take the Browns, Jets, or 49ers defense?
Ooh. I would narrow it down to the Browns 49ers. I don't trust the Jets defense this year, personally.
Okay.
I think you can go either way. I would trust the Browns defense. I think
I'm gonna go with the Browns defense.
All right, here we go.
There it is. We're gonna draft the Browns defense. That's how you do it live. You do it live. We'll take the Browns defense, and hopefully they don't screw this up. But we were talking about what were we on
We were
before that
talking.
happened?
We were talking about the defensive line, moving
Oh,
guys
D
in,
line.
keeping them
So
fresh.
rotating them in. Here's the thing. We don't know what's going on with Mike Hall Jr.
Yeah.
He's on the exempt list. That's you know how the exempt list go with the commissioner. You never know what that is. That hurt a little bit because I'm gonna keep it real with you. Mike Hall Jr. has elite game. He has elite game up front. I mean, and it's exactly what the Browns want. They want guys to get upfield and pass rush, and but you know they're deep up front. Shelby Harris, Maurice Hurst, Quinn Jefferson, all veterans, get it done. When you look at Maurice Hurst PFF rankings, top 10 defensive lineman in terms of pass rush grade for PFF. Dalvin Tomlinson will be back. He's more of a nose tackle or a nose. But see, they really wanted to get to a point where they could have had in that pass rush ability. You got Obo Ankaranko. You kick Zadarius Smith inside. You put Mike Hall Jr. and you got a Myles Garrett there. See, it's levels to it. You see how that look? That's crazy when you got that. But we'll see what happens with that. But the great thing about the Cleveland Browns is I really think that the depth really helps them out. And I think Alex Wright is going to have a breakout year. I think this is a year where you see Alex Wright maybe get you 8 or 9 sacks, and if we can do that, I also think they'll increase JOK's blitzing package as well. He'll blitz a lot more. So defense is not where I'm worried about, right? With the Browns, the defense is not what I think is going to be something that's going to be a problem, and I think the defense should carry them throughout the first 4 games, and especially up front.
Yeah, absolutely. And last year, the one thing I said, me and Tristan run this podcast, my buddy Tristan, and unfortunately he couldn't make it today. He's in class. I tried to get him on, but
it's all good, man. Hey, go to class, man. Make sure that pay off, man. You got to go to class, man.
Oh, he's got it. He's smart. He's smarter than me. That's why I keep him on. But no, last year I was talking about with this defense, I was telling people, enjoy it. Enjoy it, because you don't really understand how good of a defense that we got here. And somehow the Browns managed to keep everybody back. I mean, everybody has come back, and you only added to it. So I'm pumped. I'm so excited for the defense. I agree with you. I think it's going to be our backbone this year, for sure. And, you know, when you have guys on the edge who can also move in and play inside, that is so valuable. But last question I had for you here, G, and then we'll get you out of here. Off topic, something different with the Cleveland Browns. Something I'm interested in getting your opinion on.
Okay.
I'm 22. I'm 22 years old. I have been to the Cleveland Browns Stadium. Been a Browns fan. Obviously, been to multiple games. You know, when I think of Brook Park and I think of the new stadium, what I think of for me is, hey, I'm going to have a family someday. I'm going to have my kids, and I want to be able to take my kids to a Browns game and to be able to enjoy this and enjoy what we are as the Dog Pound, as Browns fans. The stuff going on in Brook Park is very complicated. Obviously, you have the political side of things, the legal side of things. There's all sorts of factors. Which, by the way, we are now officially, as of today, Huntington Field. So there you go.
Huntington Bank. Yeah, listen, shout out to them, man. 24-hour protection on overdrafts. Check that out.
There we go. But G, with Brook Park, in your opinion, because I've heard it from a couple of different people, mixed reactions on both sides. Obviously, I'd love it to stay on the lake. I would love Cleveland Browns Stadium to stay on the lake. I just don't think it's possible. I think it's going to end up being Brook Park. I think the renderings are going to be what it's going to be. What's your opinion on it? How do you feel for the future of the Browns with Brook Park?
So I look at it like this. I think that it's, you know, I'm a big history buff major. So I go back and there's all kind of architectural projects that go on across the country that are just iconic. And one of them is iconic for the wrong reason. It's like the Big Dig in Boston, right? And so they were coming up with this thing where they wanted to, you know, put this highway system in in Boston, and it started off being, you know, a 10-year project, and it ran over by billions of dollars, and it lasted almost 3 decades to get it fixed, right? And so basically what that taught us is that when you're trying to revitalize and revamp existing structures, it's kind of hard to do. And one of the things that's a problem is the Cleveland Brown Stadium is landlocked on the lake. You would need to move around the highway. There's an airport there that, you know, also complicates things, and you can't really build too much around it. And nowadays, it's all about the infrastructure. It's all about the infrastructure of, hey, do we have hotels? Do we have easy access to the highways? Can we get people in and out in a very quick and timely manner, right? And do we have other things that people want to do down there? Do we have the shopping, the restaurants, the eateries, all those good things? And right now, it's a lot of that. A lot of that is not available, and it's not possible to build within a timely, fashion on the lakefront. So when you talk about Brook Park, and I'm not, dumb or naive to the fact that usually when billionaires want something, billionaires usually get it. The renderings came out, and when the renderings came out, it's almost like telling, your kid or your mom and dad back in the day was you saw those nice shiny pair of Jordans, and you're like, yeah, man, let me go show you these Jordans in the and over. Look, right? Look, right? Like your mom can't show you them joints and then take it back and say, well, listen, we can get you some Adidas. No, we didn't know. You shouldn't have showed me that if you wanted me to get those good grades. And now you want to plea bargain down to these New Balances. No shot at New Balance, but they ain't the Jordan. So the renderings came out, and it just makes a lot of sense. I mean, the fact that, you can control all the area. You have the land. That means you own you own the land that the hotels got to go on. All of the infrastructure that goes into it, the restaurants, the things to do. And plus when you get a stadium like that, you're guaranteed to touch down on the Final Four.
Oh yeah,
you're guaranteed you're going to get a Super Bowl, right? So think about it. Like WrestleMania is a possibility. All the big rodeos and derbies. Heck, Taylor Swift went on tour, and Cleveland couldn't even get a date. You know why? Because you got an outside stadium, and nobody want to come to that. And the queue is a Rocket Mortgage is way too small for a Taylor Swift concert. So now look at all the other things that you're being mentioned in the city of Cleveland, getting that revenue, getting that look, getting those dollars into your city. Yes, it sucks a little bit because I think downtown will take a hit. However, it's up to the politicians and the people that's smart enough to come up with a revitalization plan that works downtown, that is independent of the stadium in 12 games. Now, I'm not going to say it's not going to hurt, but to me, it's already done. It's a done deal. It's just the, they're going through the motions of it. It's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's for the better. I know it's not what everybody would want, but at the end of the day,
I want to be inside, man. I don't know about you.
Oh, yeah. No, I've been to some cold games. But with that being said, thank you again for coming on. Everybody, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, Barbershop, at GBush91 on Twitter. G, appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on, man. Love talking to you. And,
no problem.
You got anything else you want to add?
Hey, listen, sorry about the fantasy draft. I thank you for bearing with me here. But yeah, no, shout out to you and salute to you, man. I wish you nothing but the continued success over here. Keep going. A lot of people that are come from your generation and guys that want to get on. This is one of the best ways to do it. There's a lot of people that scoff and look at people like, oh, you're doing your own media, but listen. The internet, I believe, put ESPN out of business.
Yeah.
Like, because now there's guys that are hungry, that's grinding. This the new age for media. And if you want to do something to grow your brand, this is the best way to do it. So I salute all the independent guys out there, all the young dudes that's out here up and coming, because one day you will be the guys in limelight because you put the bricks in, you put that time, energy, and effort in. So make sure y'all subscribe to the channel. make sure you're going around checking him out and follow him on Twitter. So I appreciate you.
Yep. Hey, man, I appreciate you again for coming on. But, yep, everybody, let us know your thoughts. Comment section below. Drop a like. Go check out G. Bush on all his platforms. He got a lot of great stuff. I love the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. It's always in my ear at work. Kills a lot of time. It's great.
I love that, man. I appreciate it. And as always, go Browns.
Go Browns.